Welcome to Crime 411 with me, Melissa Marquet. In this episode, I am going to be talking about the Brian Banks case. Brian was accused of rape when he was 16. Now, I want you to imagine that you are 16 years old. You have college scouts looking at you, and you've already been offered a full scholarship to college to play football. You are your high school football team star, and you are on the juniors to watch list for next season for best athletes in the area. And in a split second, your life and your dreams are stolen from you because someone says, he raped me. That's what happened to Brian Banks. Juanetta Gibson, I'm going to show you her picture. Juanetta Gibson claims that Brian forced her down a hallway at school and raped her. And immediately following the accusation, Brian was expelled from school. And even though he was only 16, he was tried as an adult, which hurt him even more. When Brian was in court, his lawyer told him that he could either go to trial and pointed out that he was a large black man and that the majority of the jury would be white, and that he would spend the rest of his life in prison, or he could accept a plea deal and plead no contest, which means he's not admitting guilt and he's not saying he's innocent. He's really just saying nothing. And that he would get 3 months probation and he could move on with his life. No time in prison, 3 months probation, move on with his life and be back home with his mother playing football. He asked if he could talk to his mother about it and was told no. He, being tried as an adult, was not allowed to speak to anyone. He needed to make the decision on his own, and that he had 10 minutes to decide, or that offer was being taken off the table. This just is crazy. He had DNA evidence proving he did not rape Juanetta Gibson. Yet his attorney at the time wasn't confident enough to go to trial and believe that she could get him free, that she could set him free. No, she didn't believe enough in herself as an attorney to go to trial. And so she told a 16-year-old child he had 10 minutes to decide the fate of the rest of his life, either go to jail for the rest of his life or 3 months probation, and then he could go back to living his life like a normal 16-year-old boy. What do you think you would have done at 16? You would say, I want to go back home and I want to play football and I want to be with my mom, right? So he decided to take the plea deal. When he went to court, the judge asked him, he said, how do you plead? And he said, he really wasn't even sure of what he was saying, but he said, I plead no contest. And the judge said, you understand that you will have to register as a sex offender. And he really didn't understand because he was a 16-year-old kid and his lawyer didn't explain any of that to him. So he just said, okay, yeah, okay. And within a moment, the judge, after Brian pled no contest, said, okay, your probation is denied and you will be going to prison for 6 years. You will be registering as a sex offender for the rest of your life. And Brian said, wait a minute, wait, what? That's not what my attorney said. My attorney said I was going to get 3 months of probation and I was going to go home. And at that point, they wouldn't even let him speak because it was a done deal. It was over. He put in his plea, and that was what the judge enforced. There was no going back. There was no, oh, wait a minute, I didn't really understand what I was doing. It was a done deal. And Brian Banks went to prison for 6 years for a rape that he claims he did not commit. During his time in prison, he wrote to Justin Brooks. Justin is an attorney, and he is with an organization. It's a nonprofit. He's one of the founders of it, called the California Innocence Project. And he and his team work pro bono to help people who have been convicted of a crime and maintain their innocence. And Brian wrote to him numerous times while he was in prison asking for help, and he was turned down every time. So when Brian got out of prison, he was on probation. He had a 5-year parole, and he started playing football again. And he said he was trying to get his life back, and he was enjoying playing football and whatnot. And at the same time, while he was out on parole, a law was put in place in California where he lived that said any person who was currently on parole for a sexual assault related crime would now have to wear an ankle monitor with a GPS tracker, and they were not allowed to leave and go more than 2,000 miles, or I think it was 2,000 miles of their home. Couldn't go near a school or anything like that. Still, of course, being a sex offender, you can't anyway, but now they were going to have this ankle monitor. And Brian told his parole officer, he said, "Man, I'm playing football again. Can I at least take it off when I'm playing football?" And he said, "No, you're just going to not have to play football. And you're going to have to find a real job, a regular job, and, you're going to have to wear this monitor. Charge it at night, charge it in the morning, don't take it off." And basically that was it. So he stopped playing football again. And he continued to write to Justin Brooks asking for help. And of course, he was denied every time. So he had spoken to Justin at one point, and Justin, he said, "Listen," he said, "I can't help you. In order for us to file an appeal to reopen your case, you have to have new evidence that was not known at the time that you made a plea deal. You never went to trial, so we can't use anything. There's nothing to use because you didn't go to trial. You can't appeal something that went wrong in a trial if there is no trial." He said, "So the only hope for you is if you have some sort of new evidence that you can present and ask them to reopen the case. And you don't have that, so there's nothing I can do. I can't help you." And he said, "Even though the legal system is broken and I would like to help you, there's just nothing I can do." And so Brian, he said, "What was that appeal what was that called that you said again?" And Justin told him whatever it was called, and Brian said, "Okay." So he went and he filed that appeal on his own. And even though Justin Brooks was not representing him as his attorney, he listed him as his attorney on that appeal. So he called Justin again once he got the denial, and he said, "I filed an appeal. They denied it. I need you. I need your help." And Justin said, "Yeah, I know, because I have a copy of it here, because they sent me one, because apparently you said I was representing you when I'm not. What's that about?" So Brian said, "Well, I had to put somebody, and so Justin said, "Well, I'm not representing you. You can't do that." And at the same time, he was very impressed with the paperwork that Brian put together to file the appeal. And he's like, "Did you do this by yourself or did you have help? Because most of the time when people file an appeal on their own, it's not very good. And this is really good." And Brian said, I read about the laws when I was in prison and I did it myself." And apparently Justin Brooks, the attorney with CIP, was impressed with him enough that he said, "Okay, listen." He said, "I'm going to send 2 people from my team out to Los Angeles to talk to you." He said, "I am not saying that I'm taking your case. I'm not representing you. All I'm saying is that they're going to come out and talk to you and see if they can come up with any new evidence that would possibly be enough to file an appeal to reopen your case. But I'm not making any promises because I don't want to get your hopes up." So Brian was like, "Okay, this is great." So 2 of the of the team members from the California Innocence Project went out and talked to Brian. They interviewed other classmates that went to school with Brian back in 2002 when this happened. Some of them said that Juanetta had told them, Brian didn't rape me, right? But still, it wasn't enough evidence to file an appeal to reopen his case. And Justin, the attorney, explained to him, he said, I have filed appeals for cases that I have been handling for 20 years, and I have had enough evidence that there's no reason for them to deny that, and they get denied anyway. Somebody saying that back in high school, Juanetta told them she made it up is not enough evidence for me to file an appeal and ask them to reopen this case. They're not going to do it. And I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. We tried, and I can't help you. And Brian, again, just being kicked when a man is down. And he said, what do you need from me? And Justin said, I need some sort of new evidence that is extraordinary. And that was when Brian found out that even though he had DNA that proved he didn't rape Juanetta Gibson, it was inadmissible in court because it wasn't new evidence. I can't even imagine what that would make a person feel like. And that's just a prime example of how our legal system is so broken. There is no logical reason why that should be inadmissible in court. There's no logical reason why a man should have to be held at gunpoint for the rest of his life because the attorney he had when he was a 16-year-old child failed to do their job, or wasn't confident enough in their ability to do their job, and didn't submit evidence or didn't explain to him how things worked. There is no reason why this man should be held at gunpoint and imprisoned for the rest of his life because one attorney dropped the ball. That is completely unfair. But that was when he found out that any of the evidence he had, regardless of how strong it was in his case, he couldn't use it. And he needed something extraordinary and huge in order to really be able to file an appeal and request that the court reopen his case. And he said, okay. And he was just beaten down. In a strange and miraculous divine intervention, really, is what I would have to call it. Brian, while he was still on parole, was on Facebook. And he was on Facebook one day when he got a friend request from Juanetta Gibson. What? The girl who claimed that he dragged her down a hallway and raped her when he was 16 was now sending him a friend request on Facebook? You would think it was a joke, right? Like, who is this really? Who made this profile? What a sick, twisted person to do something. But it was actually her. And he messaged her and he said, why would you send me a friend request? And she said, well, I was hoping, it's been a long time, that we could let bygones be bygones and that maybe, we could chill sometime. I don't even know what would go through my mind in that moment. I think I would shut down on some level and I don't think I would be able to think. And again, keep in mind that he was still on parole. So if he had any contact or communication with her at all, he would be thrown right back in prison for breaking and violating his probation. But he said, you know what? I'm already in prison. I got this damn ankle bracelet around my ankle. I can't do anything. I can't get a job. People look at me, and even though I tell them I'm innocent, they think I'm a rapist. I'm already in prison. And he messaged her and asked her if she could call him. And she did. And he said, do you understand why it would be hard and difficult for me to hang out with you when I have spent the last 10 or 11 years of my life in prison and on parole? I can't work. I lost my dreams of playing football. I lost my scholarship. I lost my life because of what you said. Can you understand how that would be hard? And she said, well, I guess if you don't want to chill, it's all right. I have to wonder if there's something like, does she have some sort of mental retardation, or is she really just that nuts? Like, I really want to know. But anyway, he said, no, wait, hold on. He said, to be honest with you, this is where the manipulation came in, and this man is brilliant. He said, to be honest with you, I am stuck in life, and there's only one person who can help me get unstuck, and that person is you. So maybe we can hang out. Maybe we can sit down and talk about everything and just talk. And she said, okay. So he hired a man who was working to become a private investigator. He was actually a insurance agent at the time who was working on getting his PI license. And they devised a plan, knowing that if she told anybody that he was around her, that he would go back to prison. He devised a plan that he was going to have her meet him at this insurance agent's office, who was going to basically just be there as an advisor to talk to them about everything that had happened and advise them on how they could move forward with a friendship after everything that had happened. And they placed a camera, a private camera, a hidden camera, sorry, in the office. And she showed up. And she recanted her story on video and admitted that she lied and that Brian had never raped her or dragged her down a hallway or sexually assaulted her at all. She said that let me give you a brief history of what actually did happen, actually. So Brian says that in the school that they went to, there was a hallway, that there were different buildings for their campus. There was a hallway, and it was a known hallway where kids went if they liked each other to kind of make out or whatever. No, and he liked her, she liked him. So they went down this hallway just planning to kind of make out and, light petting or whatever. And he heard a teacher, and he got scared because he knew that if he got caught with this girl at school, that there was a chance he was going to get in trouble and not be able to play football. And so he told her, he's like, look, I'm just not really feeling this anymore. I'm going to go out that door. You go out that door. And she was insulted and hurt. And she was upset with him. When she left and she went back into the main part of the school, one of the security officers at the school said, I saw you with that boy. I know what you're doing. And she said, it wasn't my idea. And she said, so are you saying he forced you? Did he rape you? I'm going to have to tell your mother what's going on here. And so she says, I didn't want my mom to find out that I was messing around with a boy. So I said he raped me. Boy, oh boy. So Brian's got this on video, right? And during this entire thing that's going on, her biggest concern was the fact that she and her mother had sued the school for not providing a safe environment and saying that is why she got raped on campus, because they did not provide a safe environment. And she received a settlement of $1.5 million for that, which she had received $750,000 of upfront, and then she was scheduled to receive the second half of the settlement later, a few years later. Her biggest concern was this, right here. She said, I don't want to have to pay it back. What? If you look at the pictures here, she just looks completely non-apologetic. She's completely unapologetic here, knowing that she ruined this man's life. She had him thrown in prison. He lost his dreams. He was already being looked at to play NFL pro ball. And because of her, he lost his entire life. And she is completely unapologetic. And all she's concerned about is, I don't want to have to pay the money back. What? And you can look at his pictures. You can look at his face in these pictures. You know, the one on top, that picture, he's looking at her like, what the hell is wrong with you? And when she finally admits that she lied, he just puts his head down on the desk and cries, because in that moment, it's like, I'm vindicated. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be free, right? So with this, he takes the videos and he goes back to the California Innocence Project. And this is Justin Brooks, the attorney that is a co-founder of that organization. And he says to them, you told me that in order to take my case that I needed something extraordinary. And you told me it had to be new. And I have a video right here, a new video. And Juanetta admits that she lied and that I didn't rape her. And they're like, what? He says, I'm going to play it for you. He plays the video for the entire team at the California Innocence Project. And they can't believe it. And they're going, I can't believe you have this. Like, home run. I cannot believe you have this. And then Justin Brooks asked him a question that would just kick him further down from where he already was. When he asked him, you did tell her you were videoing this, right? And he hadn't. He said, well, there's a sign on the wall that says the room is being monitored. And he said, you didn't tell her that you were videoing this discussion? And he said, no. He said, Brian, he said, we can't use it in court. And Brian said, excuse me? He said, we can't use it in court. In the state of California, you have to tell the person that you're videoing it or it's inadmissible in court. I would, I don't even know what I would do. And Brian said, you have got to be kidding me, man. And he said, do you think you can get her to say it again? And he said, hell no. She didn't even want us to talk about it the first time. And Justin said, I can't help you. I know that what you have proves that you're innocent, but I can't, we can't use it, and I still can't help you. And Brian said, he said, Justin, he said, I know that the legal system doesn't care about me. I know that the judge doesn't care about me. I know the DA doesn't care about me. And I know that the courts do not care about me. But I do know that you care about me, because they had become friends. He said, and I am begging you. He said, please. He said, please, Justin, please help me save my life. That gets me tripped up every time. Sorry. And Justin, he said, okay. And Brian said, okay. And so at this point, they still needed new evidence that they could present in an appeal to ask for them to reopen the case, and they didn't have it. Juanetta had totally disappeared. She wasn't talking with Brian anymore. She wouldn't communicate with him. And so the idea of getting her to say this again on video, knowing she was being videoed, was just not happening. And when the original video was taken, after that, they asked her to sign a statement that day that she had not been raped, and she refused, and she got angry and she left. So there was no way that she was going to come back and talk on video knowing she was being recorded. And they couldn't find her anyway. So Justin Brooks, now representing Brian Banks, said, I have an idea. He said, sometimes when you go to the media and you are accusing someone of something, they will come forward on their own to defend themselves. And he said, we can do that. We can go to the media and see if she comes forward and tries to defend herself. And Brian said, let's do it. So that's what they did. They went to the news and they shared the video. And it's amazing too, because even though he could have gone back to prison for being in her company, he still said, I don't care. He said, if it gets back to your PO that you were around her, you're going back to prison. And he said, I'm already in prison. I told you that. Let's do it. So they went to the news and shared the video of her saying that he had not raped her. And sure enough, her mother comes forward. Now, her mother is and had been controlling and just literally, you know what they say, like being a hawk over her daughter and telling her what she could and couldn't say, and she would not let her talk to anybody. And it was, he raped my baby and he's going to pay, and don't talk to anybody is, basically what she told, Juanetta. So of course she comes forward when the media releases this video and says Brian offered her $20,000 to say that he didn't rape her, and this is BS and yada yada. So they say, okay, come to court and we'll talk about this in front of the judge and we will clear it up. She didn't show up. She was late. She went there that day with Juanetta and one of Juanetta's young children, but by the time she got there, the judge said, sorry, but we have other things on the docket. We can't just hold everything up waiting for her to show up. So you're going to have to reschedule the hearing. And I think at this time, at that point, I may be mistaken, but I think they only had 2 weeks left of his 10-month probation. And it was either prove his innocence within that 10-month period or it was done. That was it. And, and the DA was really not willing to help. And Justin Brooks went to the DA and he asked him, before this, he said, I need your help. He said, this kid's different. He's innocent. He said, I have a video of his accuser admitting and recanting her story, and I need your help, to get his conviction overturned. I need you to help me. And the DA was just very arrogant and very unwilling to bend. So Justin Brooks said, let me ask you a question. How do you think the courts would feel knowing that you as a DA nor anyone on your team ever went to the crime scene to investigate it when this happened? He said, because you haven't, and I have. He said, I went to the crime scene. I went to the hallway that Juanetta says he dragged her through and forced her to have sex with him. And that hallway is filled with classrooms. That hallway has classrooms with their doors always open. School was in session and every single class was full. And if this young man had dragged her against her will through that hallway, there is no way that a single person would not have heard something. But you wouldn't know that because you never went to the crime scene. So I'm going to ask you again if you can help me out with this case. Sure enough, the DA became a lot more flexible. So that day in court, when they were waiting for Juanetta to come and she didn't, she showed up late. And Justin Brooks and the DA, they chased her and her mom down because, of course, the mother was there. And they said, hey, just because you're late doesn't mean we can't talk or whatever. And she said, I'm not answering your stupid questions. I'm just here to clear up this BS. And they said, we're here for the same reason. We just want to clear it up. And if we can just sit down and talk for a few minutes, we can clear it up and then move on and just forget about it and not have to talk about it anymore. So they said, fine. So they went into a room. It was the DA, Justin Brooks, Brian Banks. I don't know if his mother was in the room at that time, but I know her mother was, and she had one of her children with her, which was a toddler. And the mother was very overbearing about what Juanetta could and couldn't say. And so anytime they would ask a question, the mother would say, he raped my girl, he raped my baby, he got what he deserved, and he offered her $10,000 to say that she lied. And he said, the attorney Justin said, wait a minute, you said it was $20,000. Was it $20,000 or $10,000? Because now you're changing your story. And at that time, Juanetta's young child started to whine and act up. And so Juanetta said, do me a favor, Mom, just take the baby out into the hallway until, the baby calms down. To which, amazingly enough, she did, because you would normally think someone who was that controlling would never have left that room, but she did. And during that few minutes that she was in the hallway, Justin took it upon himself to do what he could do to manipulate and break her down, which really wasn't very hard. She obviously isn't the sharpest shed in the tool, you know what I mean, in the toolbox. And he said to her, he said, your mom said that Brian offered you $20,000 to say that he didn't rape you, and then that it was 10,000. He said, we know that that's not true, right? Like, he didn't offer you that much money, right? And she said, he don't even have any money. So now they were getting somewhere. They were breaking her down a bit. He said, so are you saying that he didn't offer you any money to say that on that video? And she said, nah, he didn't offer me any money. So Justin said, the attorney said, we all make mistakes and it's okay. And we all say things that we don't mean sometimes that we wish we could take back. He said, especially when we're really, really young. And he said, and you were really, really young, and people say things that they don't mean, and it's okay. He said, what did you think was going to happen when you went down that hallway with Brian that day? And she said, I just thought, we were going to make out and maybe have some light touching or whatever. So the DA said, hold on. He said, you said that he dragged you down that hallway against your will. And now you're saying that's not true, that you went with him on your own, that it was, that you agreed to go with him because you knew what you were expecting, which was to make out with him and have some touching. So are you saying that he didn't force you down that hallway? And she said, that's not what I'm saying. And he said, no, that's exactly what you said. And with this, the mother barges into the room, cuts off the conversation completely. And she says, we're not answering any of your questions anymore. That's it. He raped my daughter. This meeting is over, blah, blah, blah. And she left. So Justin said to the DA, he looked at him, he said, you said that you needed new evidence from her, either in person, in a conversation, on video, or in writing, in order to help me with this. He said, she just said that she went with him willingly through that hallway. That wipes out the kidnapping charge. He said, that's new. That's new evidence. He said, that's enough for you to file this appeal to reopen the case. And the DA started saying, well, it's really not enough evidence, this, that, and the other thing. And with this, Brian Banks, his mom, came in and she said to the DA, she said, do you have children? This was in the movie. This made me cry. I cried a lot watching this movie. And he just looked at her and she said, do you have any idea what it's like to spend your life trying to protect your child only to watch them be convicted of a crime they're innocent of and go to a prison with violent, terrible people that are truly violent, knowing that they could hurt your baby at any time? And she said, I am begging you. She said, you have a video, admissible or not, you have a video of her recanting her story. You know he's innocent, and you have an opportunity to make it right. And I am begging you to please fix this. Please fix this. And next time they went to court, they filed the appeal based on new evidence, of course, and they went to court, and the judge asked if the attorney for Brian had anything to say, and he said yes. And he stood up and he said, I used to think people were wrongfully convicted of crimes because of a broken system. He said, and now I'm starting to wonder if it's not because we're broken. He said, including myself. He said, we are conditioned to follow the statutes and we are conditioned to get through the system quickly and efficiently. He said, and that's wrong. He said, this man is innocent. And he said, we not only have an opportunity to give him his life back, but his dreams. He said, and that never happens. He said, I am asking you to please make this right and give this man his life and his dreams back. Thank you. And then they asked if the state had anything to say. And the DA got up and he said that they would agree to overturn the conviction if the court would agree to overturn the conviction. You can imagine Brian's shock to that one, right? And the judge, he said, okay. And he overturned his conviction. Can you imagine how that would feel? This was on May 24th of 2012 that he was exonerated of rape and kidnapping of a crime he didn't commit. His record was expunged, and he was a free man. And, I look at these pictures and it breaks my heart. I mean, you can see the pain in his eyes. Even though he had been vindicated, you can see such pain for everything that he had to go through. The pain is it is so apparent. And, but he was exonerated. And shortly after that, he got a phone call from the coach of the Seahawks, who originally back in high school was looking at him and offered a scholarship to play football. And he said, "Hey, Brian," he said, "it was really good to see you on TV, and I wanted to see if you wanted to come out and try out for the team." And Brian was like, "Of course, yes." And he flew out, and he didn't make the cut, but he also tried out for the San Francisco 49ers, and there were some other teams too over the course of that year, and he didn't make the cut on any of them. But he was signed to the Atlanta Falcons, and he was signed to them on April 3rd of 2013, pardon me. And he was signed to the Atlanta Falcons after everything that he had gone through, thinking he had lost his dreams and that he was never going to have an opportunity to play professional football. And I love these pictures so much. I just love these pictures. It's a bittersweet thing to see these pictures, because this should have been his life always, right? And while it's amazing and joyful to know that he was able to still fulfill those dreams, it's also really sad to know that he could have been living that dream since high school if this girl had not lied and said he raped her. I mean, who knows how his life would be different? Maybe he would have met somebody and gotten married and had children and be raising a family right now. I mean, we don't know, right? So on one hand, it is amazing that he was able to see that dream through, but it's equally as sad to me that he didn't get to do that his whole life, and he should have. Very, very sad. Juanetta, the class act that she is, people are wondering what happened to her. So she was sued by Long Beach Unified School District because they said that her filing a false claim and suing the district for a rape that didn't happen cost them $1 million in expenses, legal fees, and $1.5 million in taxpayer money to pay her a settlement, plus interest on that. So she was ordered to pay back $2.6 million to Long Beach Unified School District, which I'm sure she hasn't paid a penny of. But let's just see what they say here. I want to bring this forward. So the original settlement, like I said, was for $1.5 million. She got $750,000 up front based on the terms of the original deal. Obviously, the second payment of $750,000, that obligation was squashed, right? They say that since this whole incident took place, that she had a number of claims against her in civil litigation, including restraining orders against her, domestic violence charges. She had lost all 5 of her children, and somehow managed to go through $750,000 and was receiving public assistance. And she was being sued by the county for failing to pay child support. How do you fail to pay child support when you just received $750,000? Like, what? But what I love most about this article that was published was that they made sure to say that while this all happened to her, Banks was now on the roster of the National Football League's Atlanta Falcons. And that made me happy. I love that they added that in there. So, going back to these pictures, there's a couple of items I want to touch on. And for one, there need to be consequences for people who claim that they have been raped or sexually assaulted by another person when that is not true. There is nothing in the laws right now that says if someone is exonerated, like Brian Banks, that the person who accused him has to do any sort of jail time at all. That is not okay. I personally feel as though the moment the court exonerated this man was the same moment that she should have had handcuffs slapped on her wrists and been dragged to prison. And she should at the very least have to serve the same exact amount of time in prison that he had to serve. Because in this situation, there is a victim, and it is Brian Banks. And that goes for anybody who is falsely accused of a crime. There need to be consequences. The fact that there are no consequences means that there are no deterrents for people to falsely make allegations against someone of sexual assault, rape, molestation, nothing. Because they know that even if it comes out that they were lying, nothing's going to happen to them, which is not okay. And because of that, people have become conditioned to automatically question anyone who comes forward with a claim of sexual abuse or rape, and to question the validity of their claim, which is also not okay, because that is why we have so many victims of sexual assault that never come forward, because they know that the legal system is going to re-victimize them again, even though they have already been the victim of a horrific, disgusting crime. And these people are not willing to go through that again when they know that they will be put on stage to have their entire life and every word that they've ever said torn to shreds for the legal system to try and find an ounce of any area they can to discredit them. It is not okay. The actual victims of sexual abuse they have harsher consequences for coming forward than these people who claim that they are raped and were lying. That's backward, okay? That needs to change. That is an area of the law that needs to change, and it needs to change fast. I'm going to go back here to these pictures of Brian because these make me happy with the Falcons. And I want to also say our legal system is broken. That is the understatement of the century. At some point I had contemplated whether or not I wanted to go to law school. And at the time I had been handling copyright infringement and copyright fraud cases on my own, representing myself. And I won 300 cases by myself without a lawyer because I studied and I learned and I was passionate. And that was the time when I thought maybe I would be interested in becoming a lawyer. But then I remembered I had all of this evidence and all of this information that gave me leverage in a negotiation process. But had I actually gone to trial, 90% of those details would not have been admissible in court. And knowing that if I were an attorney, I could have everything I needed to prove a case one way or another and not be able to do so due to some stupid statute, it would drive me crazy. I wouldn't be able to do it. It would be to be able to have to be stuck in a situation where I could right a wrong, but due to some stipulation in the law, I wasn't able to do that. It would torture me. I couldn't do it. So that's another aspect of the legal system that really needs to be looked at, and it really needs to change. Again, like I stated, just one aspect of it is the fact that in this situation, a 16-year-old kid gets terrible advice from a lawyer. He's not allowed to talk to an adult about that advice. He has to make the decision on his own. He has 10 minutes. And simply because the attorney at the time didn't want to go to trial because she didn't trust herself enough to win the case, she has all this evidence, DNA, proving he's innocent, this, that, and the other thing. Well, because that attorney sucked at her job, moving forward, any of that evidence, no, you can't use it. Why? That's ridiculous. There is no logical explanation why any evidence at all should ever be excluded from being admissible in court. Now, I understand the whole have a warrant thing, right? Because we do have to have some sort of structure. We can't just be Neanderthals about it. But if that evidence was collected properly and that evidence was part of a case and it would have been admissible at that time, it should be admissible moving forward. There's no reason for it not to be. So again, Brian Banks is just one of so many people who have been wrongfully convicted of crimes that are in prison right now. And some of these people are on death row for crimes they didn't commit. And the people who accuse them have no consequences. They don't. Why is Juanetta Gibson not in jail? She should be in prison. And I don't know if it's a matter of Brian would have to file a civil suit against her or a criminal suit against her or not, and maybe he just didn't want to, because I do know that when he stepped out of the courthouse, of course, the press was there the day that he was exonerated, and they said to him, they said, "You must be so angry. Are you angry?" And he said, he said, "I met a man while he was in prison. It was one of the teachers that teaches the classes at prison." He said, "And he once told me that at some point, you need to let go of all that in order to be able to move forward." He said, "And I let go of all that." He said, "All I've ever wanted is my freedom, and I got that today." So I'm not a lawyer, right? We just talked about that. But I don't know if it's a matter of if he had pressed criminal charges, could he have had her thrown in jail? I don't know. But it should be automatic. It should be automatic. If you lie, I mean, think about all the money that she cost the courts and the police and the investigation team, on top of the legal fees for suing the school, and the fact that this man lost 11 years of his life. I mean, the whole situation is just, it's terrible. The fact that she doesn't instantly get arrested once it is proven that she lied and put in prison is injustice at its finest. So that is something that I want to talk with all of you about. I want to know, I'm sure you all feel the same way, but I'm interested in having a discussion to see how you all think something like that could be implemented and what drawbacks we may face by trying to do something like that. So I am going to schedule a Facebook Live, and if you subscribe to Crime 411 on YouTube, you'll get a notification as to when that is happening. You will also get a notification if you follow us on Facebook. We are on Twitter, Instagram. Our website is crime411.org. I want to thank you all so much again for choosing Crime 411 as a source of information. And I hope that you will partake in the conversation that we have about this case and cases like it moving forward. Again, thank you so much for choosing Crime 411.